Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into the story of an absolutely audacious woman who, quite literally, drove the modern automotive industry into existence. You know, when we think of the very first cars, we usually picture guys in dusty workshops turning wrenches, right? But the actual reality of how the automobile became a world-changing technology, well, it involves a story of intense secrecy, immense physical grit, and a brilliant woman who just decided she was completely tired of waiting for the rest of the world to catch up.
So we start our story in the dead of night, August 5th, 1888, in Mannheim, Germany. A mother and her two teenage sons are about to commit what was considered an illegal, absolutely blasphemous, and highly dangerous act. They're sneaking out of their house, but they aren't on foot. No, they're attempting to steal a highly experimental, three-wheeled motorized carriage.
And they have to be incredibly quiet to avoid waking her fastidious husband Carl or, alerting the local police, who are actually stationed nearby specifically to ensure this dangerous machine stayed confined to the yard. Berthal Benzn and her sons, 15-year-old Eugene and 13-year-old Richard, pull off this brilliantly stealthy escape. They literally push this massive, heavy iron and wood contraption down the alley by hand. And only when they are completely out of earshot do the boys swing the massive horizontal flywheel to finally fire that internal combustion engine into life.
Section 1. A Secret Before Dawn. Now this wasn't just some joyride. This was the inciting incident that would change the world forever. Back at the house, Bertha left only an incredibly simple and technically truthful note for her sleeping husband. It just said, "Gone to visit mother in Pforzheim." When Carl finally woke up and read this, it literally took him hours to realize that his family hadn't simply walked down to the train station. No, they had taken his life's work out into the unforgiving wild. Section 2. Funding the Dream. You see, Bertha wasn't just a passive observer in her husband's workshop. Not at all. When she met Carl back in 1869 and married him in 1872, she immediately used her own dowry to buy out his terrible business partner, which effectively saved his entire enterprise. She was the absolute bedrock of that family. In fact, fast forward to New Year's Eve 1879, when funds were tight and morale was at rock bottom. It was Bertha who pushed Carl to go out to the workshop to try their luck just one more time. And wouldn't you know it, that very night, their first internal combustion engine finally fired up. All of this groundwork eventually led to the historic 1886 patent for the motor wagon. But before she was Bertha Benz, she was Kacheli Bertha Ringer. She came from a wealthy family, she possessed this brilliantly inquisitive mind, and she was deeply, deeply ambitious. But because of the era she was born into, she was strictly denied access to a university education simply because of her gender. So what did she do? She poured that brilliant problem-solving mind entirely into Carl's engineering dreams. They were a true 50-50 partnership. Section 3. The Devil's Machine. So, despite securing that historic 1886 patent, the Benz patent motor wagon was initially an absolute commercial failure. A total flop. Carl saw a practical, working, three-wheeled automobile. He knew he had solved the mechanical problem. But society's reaction? It was brutal. The press openly scoffed at it, and the church actively condemned it as the work of the devil. Now, Carl was a fantastic, fastidious engineer, but he was incredibly timid when it came to marketing. He just wanted to keep tinkering in the yard, afraid to show it off, while society remained absolutely terrified of this noisy, smoking contraption. Bertha looked at this whole situation and asked herself a really profound question. How do you prove the world needs a machine they're terrified of? She realized that just tinkering in the yard wasn't going to cut it anymore. Something drastic had to be done to bypass authority, shake society by its shoulders, and show everyone the vehicle's true world-altering potential. Section 4. The First Road Trick. And that brings us right back to that daring dawn escape we talked about, and the brutal physical reality of what Bertha and her boys were actually attempting to do. 106. That is the number of kilometers to her mother's house in Pforzheim. By attempting to drive this distance, Bertha Benz was undertaking the very first city-to-city automotive road trip in human history. Literally no one had ever pushed an internal combustion engine to do anything like this before. To really understand the danger here, consider what they were working with. They had a blistering top speed of just 10 miles per hour and a fuel tank holding a meager 1.3 gallons. Plus, the route was made up of carriage tracks designed for horses. That meant the Benz's single front wheel bounced violently on the grassy middle strip the entire way. And because the cooling system was this open thermosiphon design, they had to stop constantly, and I mean constantly, to pull water from streams and ditches just to keep the engine from melting down. It was physically exhausting and incredibly risky.
Section 5. Inventing on the fly.
With such limited capabilities and literally zero infrastructure to support them out there, the true genius of Berthal Benzn really shines in her ability to MacGyver her way through unprecedented mechanical failures. Seriously, the next time you get your car serviced, I want you to thank Berthal Benzn. She handled everything. She cleared a blocked fuel line with her long hat pin and even used her own garter to insulate a frayed ignition wire that was shorting out. I mean, how incredible is that?
But fuel was by far their biggest issue. They were burning through their 1.3 gallons really fast. So when she ran out of gas about 20 miles in, she rolled into the village of Wieslak, banged on the door of the local apothecary, and demanded his entire supply of ligroin. Now, ligroin was a petroleum solvent normally used for cleaning stains out of clothes. The locals thought she was totally crazy, warning her she'd poison her horses. Instead, she poured it right into the tank, fired up the engine, and inadvertently turned that small pharmacy into the world's very first gas station. And her ingenuity didn't stop there. Further down the road, she noticed the vehicle's wooden brakes were wearing down to absolutely nothing on the steep downhill gradients. But did she panic? No way. She stopped at the next village, calmly found a shoemaker, and instructed him to nail thick leather patches to the wooden brake blocks to create a durable friction material. Right there, on the side of a dirt road, Berthal Benzn single-handedly invented the first brake pads.
But it wasn't just her mechanical genius that got them through. It was pure, unadulterated grit. The engine simply wasn't powerful enough for the steep hills of the Black Forest. So 13-year-old Richard would steer, while Bertha and her eldest son Eugene literally pushed the heavy machine up the inclines by hand, sweating under the sweltering August sun.
Section 6. Bertha's Legacy.
Finally, as the sun set, exhausted, completely covered in dust, but overwhelmingly victorious, they arrived at her mother's house in Pforzheim. She immediately fires off a telegram to Karl back in Mannheim, and Karl, in his typical fastidious, highly anxious engineer way, is tremendously relieved to hear they're alive. But what does he do? He immediately wires back asking for the car's drive chains to be taken off and rushed back to Mannheim on a fast freight train so he can use them on a static display car for an upcoming show.
This perfectly highlights the difference between them. Karl's vision was simply another static display show car. He wanted to safely show people what the machine was. Bertha, however, possessed absolute PR brilliance. She knew the world didn't need another museum piece to stare at. They needed to see the machine in action. They needed to see how it was actually used in the real world. So if Karl urgently needed those chains back in Mannheim, well, that was perfectly fine by Bertha. Instead of putting the parts on a freight train, the valiant Bertha jumped right back into the motor wagon a few days later and became the first person in the world to drive the return road trip home. Her journey caused a massive, massive sensation. The press wrote about it, the public absolutely marveled at it, and Berthal Benzn finally saw the commercial viability of his own invention.
Decades later, at a massive 90th birthday celebration in her honor, surrounded by the incredible marvels of the Mercedes-Benz company she helped forge, Bertha uttered this beautifully undeniable truth. Before me, no automobile existed. And frankly, historians and engineers completely agree. We are truly living in Bertha's world.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to take away from this explainer. It really makes you wonder, right? Behind every great invention, every piece of technology we rely on and just take for granted today, whose daring dawn escape are we entirely forgetting? Thanks so much for joining me to explore this incredible slice of history, and I'll see you